take a deep breath and look at your portfolio. Because right now, you are walking blindly into a financial slaughterhouse and you don't even realize you're the cattle. You've been fed a lie. You've been told that the American dream is wrapped in a 30-year mortgage and a white picket fence. But in 2026, in 5 specific states, that dream is mutating into a foreclosure nightmare that will incinerate your net worth faster than a brush fire in the canyons. We are standing on the precipice of a correction that will make the 2008 crash look like a Sunday brunch. The data isn't just whispering, it is screaming. Sell, exit, pivot. But what are you doing? You're listening to some broke real estate agent who needs a commission to pay for their leased BMW telling you that home prices always go up in the long run. That is a mathematical fallacy designed to keep you mediocre. I'm Kevin, and I didn't build a multi-million-dollar empire by being nice or following the herd. I built it by understanding one fundamental law of power. Money is a soldier. Every single dollar I own is a highly trained operative. I send them out to war every morning, and I expect them to return with prisoners and territory. If an asset doesn't pay me to own it, I don't hope for appreciation. I take that asset behind the barn and I shoot it. I've navigated every cycle since the 80s, and I've come out wealthier every single time because I don't speculate. I calculate. I demand cash flow. I demand a return on capital that outpaces inflation and taxation. Most people invest with emotion. They fall in love with a granite countertop or a zip code. Sharks invest with cold, hard logic. Today, I am giving you the map to survive 2026. The information in this video costs people thousands of dollars in private seminars, but I'm putting it on the table for free. However, I have a condition. This channel, Abstract Wealth, is not for the faint of heart. If you enjoy living paycheck to paycheck, if you like complaining about the economy while doing nothing to master it, then click away. Go watch a cat video. But if you want the blueprint to financial fortress building, if you want to think like a predator in a market full of prey, hit that subscribe button right now. Do it before we get into the bloodbath. The era of easy money is dead. The Federal Reserve isn't coming to save your equity. In 2026, liquidity is the only king, and if your capital is trapped in the wrong state, you are already a prisoner. Let's start with the first territory, where your money goes to die. California, the beautiful bankruptcy. Let's start with the big one, the Golden State, or as I call it in 2026, the Go Broke State, California. If you are deploying capital into California residential real estate right now, you aren't just an optimist, you are mathematically illiterate. You are bringing a knife to a nuclear dogfight. The average person, the poor person mentality, buys here because of the prestige. They say, Kevin, it's Los Angeles, it's San Francisco, it's the coast. People will always want to live here. They fall in love with the sunset, the lifestyle, and the prestige of the zip code. They ignore the fact that the state government views their equity as a public ATM. They buy a $2.5 million shack with a 1970s kitchen because they want to feel like they've arrived. Congratulations, you've arrived at the doorstep of insolvency. Here is the rich reality, how I see it. I don't see beaches. I see a hostile business environment that is toxic to capital. Capital is a coward, and it should be. Capital runs where it is celebrated and flees where it is persecuted. The smart money, the Elons, the tech titans, the venture funds, they didn't leave California because they hated the weather. They left because the math stopped working. When the sharks leave the tank, the ecosystem collapses. You are left in a state where the tax base is eroding, crime is being decriminalized, and the regulatory burden adds a 40% insanity premium to every square foot of construction. Let's look at the cold, hard numbers, the mathematical reality. In a sane market, an investor demands a cap rate of 6% to 8%. In major California hubs, once you factor in the mansion tax, skyrocketing insurance premiums because of fire risk, and state income taxes that peak at 13.3%, your net yield is lucky to hit 2%. Think about the opportunity cost. You buy a property for $2 million, you put $400,000 down. At a 6.5% interest rate, your mortgage, taxes, and insurance are bleeding you for $14,000 a month. But the market rent, it's topped out at $9,000. You are subsidizing your tenant's lifestyle to the tune of $5,000 every single month. That isn't an investment. That's a charity foundation for people who can't afford your mortgage. And here is the kicker for 2026 squatters' rights. California has created a legal framework where a professional tenant can occupy your $2 million asset, pay zero rent, and it will take you 12 months and $50,000 in legal fees to get them out. Why would I send my soldiers into a war zone where the general, the governor, has already surrendered to the enemy? In 2026, as the tech exodus moves from a trickle to a flood, the demand at the high end is evaporating. When that $2 million house appraises at $1.6 million next year, your entire $400,000 down payment is gone, wiped out. You are at zero. California is a beautiful trap. If you live there, rent a condo and keep your cash in liquid treasuries. Do not under any circumstances anchor your net worth to California soil. It is sinking. New York, the cockroach motel for capital. So we move to the Empire State. I love New York. The energy, the food, the skyline, it's unmatched. But as an investor in 2026, it's a cockroach motel for your capital. Money checks in, but it never ever checks out. The poor person's mentality sees New York City and the surrounding suburbs as the ultimate trophy. They scrape together every dollar, borrow from their 401ks, and leverage themselves to the gills to buy a 600 square foot shoebox in Manhattan or a Colonial in Westchester. They tell themselves the same comforting fairy tale: NYC is finite land. It's the center of the world. It'll never lose value. They're buying a status symbol and not an asset. Here is the rich reality. New York is currently facing what I call the Office Doomsday ripple effect. Look at the skyline. Those massive glass towers. They are the lungs of the city's economy, and they are collapsing. In 2026, remote work isn't a trend. It's the new infrastructure of the global workforce. Commercial occupancy has stabilized at levels far below pre-pandemic highs, leading to massive defaults on commercial loans. Now, why does a commercial collapse matter to you? The residential buyer, because the city has a massive budget hole to fill. When the tax revenue from those office buildings evaporates, the government only has one place to look: your pocket. The mathematical reality is terrifying. Property taxes in New York are a moving target that only moves up. For fiscal year 2026, the city is already projecting a budget gap of over $35 billion. To cover this, they are leaning on property tax levies that are reaching 20-year highs. If you own a Class 1 home or a Class 2 condo, you are the designated payer for a city that refuses to cut spending. Let's run the numbers. You buy a condo for $1.5 million. You think you're doing well because you can rent it for $6,000. But wait, in NYC you have common charges and HOA fees that can easily eat $2,500 a month. Add in your property taxes, which are currently provisional and likely to spike, and your insurance. Your carry cost is now $10,000 a month, while your income is $6,000. You are bleeding $4,000 every single month for the privilege of owning a piece of a declining empire. But Kevin, what about appreciation? Let me ask you who is going to buy that asset from you in 5 years. The hedge fund managers are in Miami. The tech firms are in Austin. The high earners. The people who actually provide the liquidity for the luxury market are fleeing the city's millionaire tax and moving to tax-friendly jurisdictions. In 2026, we are entering a liquidity crisis. If the banks see the commercial market crater, they tighten lending across the board. If a buyer can't get a jumbo loan, they can't buy your apartment. You are trapped in a high-tax, low-growth asset with no exit strategy. In my world, that's not an investment. That's a liability. Do not be the person holding the bag when the music stops in Manhattan. T-word. Part 4, Illinois. The pension time bomb. Now we head to the Midwest. Illinois, specifically Chicago and its collar counties. I'm going to be blunt, I absolutely forbid you from buying real estate here in 2026. This isn't just a bad market. It is a systemic trap designed to confiscate your wealth to pay for decades of government mismanagement. The poor person's mentality looks at a $450,000 historic brick house in a Chicago suburb and thinks, wow, what a bargain in Miami or San Diego. This would be $1.5 million. It's so cheap. They see the low entry price and fall in love with the architecture. They think they found a hidden gem, but the market is efficient and it's pricing that home low for a reason you aren't seeing on Zillow the Hidden Debt. Here is the rich reality. Illinois is effectively insolvent. As of 2026, the state is drowning in over $140 billion in unfunded pension liabilities, the worst in the nation. Think about that number. That is money promised to retired government workers that the state simply does not have. And how do they plan to get it? They are coming for your roof. In Illinois, your home isn't an asset. It's a collateralized debt obligation for the state's pension crisis. The mathematical reality is a horror movie for your balance sheet. Illinois has the highest effective property tax rates in the country, often hovering around 2.3% to 3% of the home's value every single year. Let's run the numbers on your cheap $450,000 house. At a 2.5% tax rate, you are paying over $11,000 a year in property taxes. Over a 30-year mortgage, you will pay nearly $340,000 just in taxes, almost the entire original value of the home again. And that's assuming taxes stay flat. Spoiler alert, they won't. In 2026, Chicago's budget deficit has passed the $1.2 billion mark. The city's solution is a relentless cycle of tax hikes and new fees like the cloud computing tax and per-employee head taxes that drive businesses away. When businesses leave, the tax base shrinks. When the tax base shrinks, the burden on the homeowners who stay behind must increase to cover the pension gap. It is a death spiral. Compare this to a state like Tennessee or Florida. If you take that same $450,000 and invest it in a high-yield dividend portfolio or an asset in a tax-friendly state, you are earning passive income. In Illinois, your investment is costing you $1,000 a month in taxes before you even pay a dime of interest or maintenance. The opportunity cost is massive, a $40,000 swing in net worth every year compared to a smart move. Don't buy a liability disguised as a house if you have to live in Chicago for work rent. Let the landlord deal with the 16% tax spikes we saw in Cook County last year. Keep your capital liquid, keep your soldiers ready, and do not let them get trapped in the Illinois pension hole. Moving on to the fourth offender on my blacklist, New Jersey, the Garden State. It's like Illinois' more expensive, more aggressive little brother. For years, New Jersey has consistently held the crown for the highest property taxes in the entire United States. In 2026, that crown is becoming a noose for residential investors. The poor person's mentality sees New Jersey as the safe alternative to New York City. They move to towns like Westfield Summit or Montclair to get the backyard, the good schools, and the prestigious address while commuting to Manhattan. They tell themselves, I'm building equity in a stable market. But they don't look at the town budget. They don't see that they are buying into a municipality with billions in unfunded local liabilities. They are blinded by the curb appeal and ignore the cost of carry. Here is the rich reality, how I see it. I look at return on equity ROE. If you own a home in New Jersey, your equity is being eaten alive by friction. New Jersey is the land of fees on fees. In 2026, the state has just graduated its mansion tax, a supplemental realty transfer fee. It used to be a flat 1% on buyers for homes over $1 million. Now in 2026, the burden has shifted entirely to the seller, and it's tiered. If you sell a high-end home for $3.5 million or more, you're handing over 5% of the gross price just for the privilege of leaving. That's over $120,000 in one fee alone. The mathematical reality is a death by 1,000 cuts. We're seeing families in North Jersey making $250,000 a year, which sounds like a lot, who are effectively house poor. Why? Because after they pay federal taxes, state taxes, and a $25,000 a year property tax bill, they have zero free cash flow. They have no soldiers left to invest in the stock market or business ventures. Their entire net worth is trapped in a 4-bedroom colonial that is barely appreciating because the tax burden acts as a ceiling on what the next buyer can afford to pay. The math for 2026 is simple and brutal. Property taxes of $25,000 are the equivalent of servicing an additional $350,000 of mortgage debt at 7%. That means for every dollar the property tax goes up, the purchasing power of your future buyer goes down. As interest rates stay higher for longer in 2026, buyers cannot afford both the high interest and the high tax. This is creating a valuation ceiling. You are owning an asset that has a built-in predator eating its value every month. And don't get me started on the exit tax. It's a mandatory estimated tax payment when you sell and leave the state. New Jersey wants its piece of your flesh before you cross the bridge to Pennsylvania or fly to Florida. They tax you when you earn. They tax you when you spend. They tax you when you own. And they tax you when you try to escape. In 2026, I demand assets that have low friction and high mobility. New Jersey is a high-friction swamp. If you own or sell before the 2026 normalization correction hits the suburbs. If you don't own, there's stay away. Finally, we arrive at the fifth and final state on our 2026 avoidance list, Massachusetts. Or as the locals are increasingly calling it, Taxachusetts. The poor person's mentality looks at Boston and thinks it's a fortress. They say, Kevin, it's the hub of biotech. It has Harvard and MIT. It's recession-proof. They believe that because there is high-level intellect in the city, the real estate market is protected by some invisible shield of academic prestige. They rush to buy a luxury condo in the seaport or a brownstone in Back Bay for $2,000 per square foot, thinking the demand from scientists and professors will always provide a floor for the price. Here is the rich reality. Capital is a coward, and in 2026, capital is running away from Massachusetts. Why? Because the state has declared war on success. In late 2025, Massachusetts implemented a brutal new regulation on real estate transfers. If you sell a property for over $1 million, which in Boston is basically a one-bedroom apartment, you are now subject to mandatory withholding of up to 9%. This isn't just a tax on your income, it's a direct hit on your liquidity at the moment of sale. The mathematical reality in 2026 is driven by the millionaire's tax, surtax. If you are a high earner or you sell a highly appreciated asset, your tax rate on capital gains has effectively jumped to 9% or even 12.5% for short-term gains. While the federal government under the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, OBB, has raised the federal estate tax exemption to a massive $15 million, Massachusetts has refused to blink. Their state estate tax kicks in at a measly $2 million a day. Think about the math. A married couple in Florida can leave $30 million to their kids tax-free. In Massachusetts, once that same couple passes the $4 million mark, the state starts clawing back a significant percentage of their life's work. This is causing what economists call millionaire flight. The very people who buy 5 million and 10 million homes, the ones who provide the exit for everyone else in the market, are changing their primary residence to New Hampshire or Florida. When the top of the market leaves, the middle collapses. It's a domino effect. In 2026, the price-to-rent ratio in Boston has hit an absurd level of 25-to-1. To buy a median home at $850,000, you're looking at a monthly carry cost that is nearly double what it would cost to rent the exact same property. Why would you take on the risk of a $1 million mortgage, a 9% state tax on your gain, and a restrictive estate tax when you could sit in a tax-free state and earn a 5.5% risk-free return on your cash? In 2026, smart money is rotating out of low-yield, high-friction prestige markets and into high-yield liquid assets. If you are holding luxury real estate in Massachusetts, you aren't an investor. Banjang la motngoi su tamjo kojat tianma kong chongoi mua. You are a collector of expensive antiques with no buyers. The music is stopping. The liquidity is drying up. Don't be the one left standing when the doors close on the Boston market. So where does this leave you? You've seen the carnage in California, the decay in New York, the insolvency of Illinois, the friction in New Jersey, and the liquidity trap of Massachusetts. If you're still holding assets in these prison camps for capital, you need to stop making excuses and start making moves. In 2026, the global economy has undergone a fundamental re-rating. The old rules of buy and hold anywhere are dead. We are now in a precision market. In a precision market, you don't invest in a state. You invest in a spreadsheet. If the numbers don't scream yes, your answer must be a ruthless no. Here is your 2026 action plan. First, perform a stress test on your current portfolio. If your property taxes increased by 20% tomorrow and your occupancy dropped by 15%, would you still be cash flow positive? If the answer is no, you don't own an investment, you own a ticking time bomb. Sell it while there is still a greater fool willing to buy it. Second, embrace capital mobility. The wealthy are no longer anchored to a single geography. In 2026, the winners are those who rent where they live and invest where the math makes sense. Why would you tie up $1 million in equity in a 3% yield market like Boston when you can deploy that same $1 million into a diversified portfolio of REITs, high-yield fixed income, or emerging markets like the Sun Belt 2, or SHU, where capital is actually respected? Third, you must upgrade your financial intelligence. Most people spend more time researching a new iPhone than they do researching the municipal bond ratings of the city where they buy a home. Do not be that person. Understand the unfunded liabilities of your town. Understand the exit taxes. Understand that in 2026, the government is not your partner. They are a hungry competitor for your profit. I didn't reach this level of wealth by being a hoper. I reached it by being a shark. I demand that my money works harder than I do. I demand that my soldiers return with prisoners. If you are still clinging to the idea that real estate in high-tax states is a safe haven, you are living in the past. The 2026 correction is going to be the greatest transfer of wealth in our lifetime, from the stubborn and emotional to the disciplined and the liquid. This is abstract wealth. We don't do feel-good finance here. We do cold, hard reality. If you want to survive the crash, if you want to build a fortress that no government and no recession can touch, then you need to stay tuned to this channel. I am giving you the blueprint, but you have to be the one to execute. Go back, look at your numbers, be ruthless, and get out of the way of the falling knives. Subscribe now or enjoy being part of the 2026 statistics. I'll see you in the next one. Now get to work.